In the rugged heartland of Montana, where windswept prairies meet the jagged peaks of the Blackfoot Range, a simple act of vandalism is about to ignite a war that will become legend in these parts. Deep in Shadow Creek Valley, where old-timers still tell tales of frontier justice, a former Green Beret is about to remind the world why some quiet men are best left in peace. The morning frost glittered on Marcus Reeves's weathered fence posts as he made his daily rounds, checking the boundaries of Evergreen Ranch. His trained eyes scanned the horizon, a habit ingrained from years of special operations that even 15 years of farming couldn't erase. At 52, he moved with the fluid grace of a man half his age, every step measured, every movement purposeful. His Belgian Malinois Storm padded silently beside him, the dog's alertness matching his own. The distant rumble of an unfamiliar engine caught Marcus's attention. Through the early morning mist, he watched a convoy of motorcycles wind their way along the valley road, their chrome pipes glinting in the dawn light. The Ravager Outlaws had been making their presence known in the county lately, but this was the first time they'd ventured this close to his property. "What do you make of that, boy?" Marcus murmured to Storm, who offered a low growl in response. The dog's ears were pricked forward, tracking the biker's movement with military precision. Marcus had trained Storm himself, using techniques from his days as a canine handler in special forces. The dog wasn't just a pet. He was a precision instrument, as lethal as any weapon when needed. Maya Chen, his neighbor and the local veterinarian, pulled up in her dusty pickup truck. Her usual cheerful expression was replaced by worry as she climbed out, clutching a coffee thermos. "Marcus, have you heard about the Wilsons? Their place got hit last night." Marcus straightened, brushing dirt from his worn work jacket. "Hit how?" "The Ravagers," Mia said, her voice tight. "They destroyed their tractor, spray-painted their barn, killed some livestock. Sheriff thinks it's because Tom Wilson refused to let them use his land for their activities, whatever those are." Marcus nodded slowly, his mind already mapping patterns, analyzing threats, just as he'd done in combat zones across 3 continents. "They're establishing territory," he said, quietly, using intimidation to control key properties along the valley. Mia wrapped her arms around herself against the morning chill. The Wilsons aren't the first. 3 other farms have been targeted in the past month. The Murphy place, Old Johnson's farm, even the Peterson homestead. All of them had equipment. Vandalized, property damaged. Those who gave in, who agreed to cooperate with the Ravagers, they're left alone. "Let me guess," Marcus said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "Law enforcement's hands are tied. No witnesses, no direct evidence." "Sheriff Davidson's out of his depth," Mia confirmed. "These aren't ordinary troublemakers, Marcus. They're organized, methodical. They've got connections. Evidence disappears, complaints get lost in paperwork. Those who push back, well..." She gestured toward the Wilson property. Storm's ears suddenly pricked up, and a low growl rumbled in his chest. Marcus held up a hand for silence, listening intently. The motorcycle convoy had turned around, was heading back their way. This time, they slowed as they passed his front gate. Through the morning haze, Marcus could make out details he'd missed before. These weren't weekend riders playing at being outlaws. Their formation was too precise, their spacing too professional. He counted 8 bikes, noted the subtle bulges under leather jackets that suggested concealed weapons. The lead rider, a massive man with a graying beard, locked eyes with Marcus as they passed. "That's Brick Hamilton," Mia whispered after they'd gone. "Ex-military, dishonorably discharged. He took over the Ravagers 2 years ago, turned them from common thugs into something more dangerous. They say he served in Afghanistan, maybe Iraq. Force Recon," Marcus replied quietly. "2nd Battalion, until he decided trafficking weapons was more profitable than serving his country." At Maya's surprised look, he added, "You learn to recognize your own kind." Even when they've gone wrong, the sound of more vehicles approaching drew their attention. Sheriff Davidson's patrol car led a small procession of angry farmers down the valley road. The impromptu convoy pulled up to Marcus's gate, and the sheriff stepped out, his weathered face grim. "Town meeting at the community center in an hour," Davidson announced without preamble. "The Ravagers hit 3 more places last night. We need to discuss our options." Marcus studied the gathered farmers. He saw fear in their eyes, but also determination. These were people who'd weathered droughts, floods, and economic hardships. They wouldn't give up their land without a fight. "I'll be there," he said simply. After they'd gone, Mia lingered, her expression troubled. "Marcus, they'll come for you too. Your land sits at the junction of 3 county roads. It's perfect for their operation." "Let them come," Marcus replied, his voice carrying absolute certainty. Storm stood alert at his side, sensing the shift in his master's demeanor. Mia recognized something in his tone, a glimpse of the man behind the farmer's facade. "You're not worried?" "No," Marcus said, watching the sun rise over his fields. "I've spent 15 years turning this ranch into something more than it appears. Every fence post, every building, every piece of equipment, they all serve multiple purposes." "The shed behind your barn," Mia said slowly, "the one you never open. The reinforced storm cellar that seems bigger than it needs to be. All these years, you weren't just farming, were you?" Marcus smiled slightly. "A Green Beret never really retires, Mia. We just find different battlefields." He gestured toward his property. "Everything you see here, it's not just a ranch. It's 15 years of preparation, because sometimes the best way to avoid a fight is to be so well prepared that nobody dares to start one." Storm's bark cut through the morning air, alerting them to more motorcycles approaching. This time, 3 riders pulled up to Marcus's gate. The lead bike carried Brick Hamilton himself, his massive frame making the motorcycle seem small beneath him. "Mr. Reeves," Hamilton called out, his voice carrying the practiced authority of a former officer. "Beautiful morning for a ride. Mind if we have a word?" Marcus patted Storm's head, keeping the dog steady. "Gates open," he replied calmly, watching as the 3 men dismounted. Their movements were coordinated, professional. They spread out slightly as they approached, tactical spacing, combat training showing through their outlaw facade. Hamilton stopped a few paces away, sizing up Marcus with experienced eyes. "Word is, you're a man who understands business opportunities. We've got a proposition that could make life much easier for everyone in this valley." "Not interested," Marcus replied simply. Hamilton's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You might want to think about that. Way I hear it, farming equipment's getting mighty expensive these days. Accidents happen, tractors break down. Would be a shame. If something happened to your livelihood?" Marcus met Hamilton's gaze steadily. Something in his eyes made the outlaw leader pause, a flicker of recognition passing between 2 men who'd seen the same kinds of combat. "That sounds an awful lot like a threat," Marcus said quietly. Hamilton recovered quickly, but his stance had shifted subtly. More guarded now, more alert, just stating facts. Valley's changing, progress you might say. Smart folks adapt, others, well, ask the Wilsons how resistance worked out for them. "I appreciate the warning," Marcus replied, his voice carrying the weight of years of combat experience. "Now I'll give you one. Leave this valley. Take your operation elsewhere. Because if you push this, you're going to learn why some quiet men are best left alone." The town meeting was held in the old community center, its worn wooden walls bearing witness to decades of gatherings in times of crisis. Nearly every farmer and rancher in Shadow Creek Valley had turned out, their faces grim as Sheriff Davidson laid out the situation. 4 more properties hit last night, Davidson announced, pinning photos to a bulletin board. The Wilsons lost their main tractor, the Hendersons had their irrigation system sabotaged, and both the Martinez and Cooper farms had equipment vandalized, the patterns escalating. Marcus sat near the back, observing the room with practiced eyes. He noted the fear in some faces, the anger in others, but most of all he saw determination. These were people who'd built their lives here, who wouldn't give up their land easily. Tom Wilson stood up, his weathered face tight with rage. "They destroyed everything. My tractor's engine is ruined, hydraulic lines cut, electronics fried. Without it, I can't harvest my crops. Insurance won't cover half of what I've lost." "They're targeting our equipment deliberately," Elena Martinez added, her voice carrying years of agricultural expertise. "They know exactly what to damage, how to hit us where it hurts most. This isn't random vandalism." Marcus watched as Sheriff Davidson tried to maintain order as more farmers spoke up, each with their own story of intimidation and destruction. The pattern was clear: systematic attacks designed to force compliance through economic pressure. Emire. Jen sat down beside him, her veterinary bag still slung over her shoulder from morning rounds. "The Ravagers just bought the old Miller property," she whispered. "Paid 3 times market value, cash deal. They're setting up some kind of operation." "There." "Strategic position," Marcus replied quietly. "High ground overlooking the main valley road, good sight lines, multiple access points." His tactical mind was already mapping it out, analyzing angles and approaches. Jack Peterson, whose family had farmed the valley for 4 generations, took the floor. "They came to my place yesterday, offered to protect my equipment for a monthly fee. Said accidents happen less often to folks who understand how things work nowadays." "Classic protection racket," muttered retired Deputy Collins from his seat near Marcus. "But these boys aren't just thugs. They've got organization, backing, someone's financing their land grabs." Marcus had noticed the same thing. The Ravagers' operation was too sophisticated, too well-funded for a typical outlaw gang. Their tactical movements, their strategic property acquisitions, their methodical approach to breaking resistance, it all pointed to something bigger. Sheriff Davidson cleared his throat. "I've reached out to state police, but without hard evidence of criminal activity. Their hands are tied. The property purchases are all legal, the vandalism cases are difficult to prove, and witnesses," he paused, "tend to become uncooperative." Storm's ears pricked up slightly, alerting Marcus seconds before the community center's door opened. Brick Hamilton walked in, flanked by 2 of his men. The room fell silent as the massive outlaw leader surveyed the gathered farmers. "Hope I'm not interrupting," Hamilton said, his voice carrying practiced authority. "Heard there was concern about recent equipment failures in the valley. Thought I might offer a solution." Marcus watched as Hamilton commanded the room, noting how his men positioned themselves. One by the door, one with clear lines of sight to everyone present. Professional security tactics, not outlaw intimidation. "Way I see it," Hamilton continued, "farming's a risky business. Equipment breaks down, accidents happen. But our organization offers protection services. For a reasonable monthly contribution, we can ensure your operations run smoothly. No more unfortunate incidents." "You mean no more of your men sabotaging our equipment?" Tom Wilson spat, rising from his chair. Hamilton's smile remained fixed. "Careful with accusations, Mr. Wilson. They can lead to more accidents." His gaze swept the room. "Think of it as insurance. Times are changing. Smart folks adapt." Marcus stayed silent, observing how Hamilton worked the crowd. The outlaw leader was good, mixing threats with reasonable-sounding proposals, playing on fears while offering a way out. But there was something in his eyes when he glanced at Marcus, a flicker of recognition, of wariness. After Hamilton left, the meeting dissolved into heated arguments. Some farmers wanted to organize armed patrols. Others suggested giving in to buy time. A few talked about selling out while they could still get good prices. "Marcus," Mia caught his arm as people began leaving. What are you thinking? He watched Hamilton and his men mount their motorcycles through the window. I'm thinking they're not just targeting random farms. There's a pattern. They're taking control of key positions throughout the valley. But why? Mia asked. What could they want with farmland? Location, Marcus replied. This valley's got natural barriers, limited access points, good visibility, perfect for monitoring movement, controlling transportation. His eyes narrowed. They're not building a protection racket. They're establishing a base of operations. Back at Evergreen Ranch, Marcus walked his property line, seeing it with new eyes. Every rise and depression, every line of sight, every approach route, all took on new significance. Storm padded beside him, alert for any intrusion. The sound of approaching vehicles drew his attention. Through his binoculars, he watched a convoy of trucks turn into the old Miller property. They weren't farm vehicles, heavy-duty construction, equipment generators, industrial storage containers. Right on schedule, Mia said, pulling up in her truck. They're moving fast now. 3 more farms just sold. The Thompsons, the Reeds, and Old Man Johnson's place. Marcus nodded, his mind already calculating. They're isolating holdouts, cutting off support networks. Classic insurgency tactics. Take control of key terrain, pressure the locals, establish a power base. Mia studied him. You've seen this before, haven't you? Different places, different players, same strategy, Marcus replied. Afghanistan, Iraq, Colombia, organized groups always follow similar patterns when taking over territory. The distant sound of motorcycles grew closer. Hamilton's convoy was making another pass along the valley road, a show of force designed to intimidate. But this time, they stopped at Marcus's gate. Stay here, Marcus told Mia, moving to meet them. Storm fell into step beside him, the dog's posture alert but controlled. Hamilton dismounted first, followed by 6 of his men. Their formation was different now, more aggressive, more military. They weren't playing at being outlaws anymore. Mr. Reeves, Hamilton called out, thought any more about our conversation. Nothing's changed, Marcus replied calmly, noting how Hamilton's men were spreading out, trying to establish dominant positions. Actually, everything's changed, Hamilton said. You see, your properties become vital to our operation. That ridge, behind your barn, perfect sightline down the valley, those old grain silos, excellent elevated positions. We're prepared to offer you 3 times market value. Marcus kept his voice level. Not interested in selling. Hamilton's friendly facade cracked slightly. Don't be difficult, Reeves. Valley's changing whether you like it or not. You can profit from it, or... He gestured toward the distant Wilson. Farm, you can learn the hard way. Like I said before, Marcus replied, letting just a hint of steel enter his voice. Leave this valley. Take your operation elsewhere. Or what? Hamilton stepped closer, his size intimidating. You'll stop. Us? One old farmer against my entire organization? Marcus met his gaze steadily. Last warning. Walk away. Hamilton studied him for a long moment, then smiled coldly. You know what your problem is, Reeves. You think because you've got some military background, you understand what you're dealing with. But my organization, we're on a different level. We've got resources you can't imagine. Actually, Marcus replied quietly, your problem is thinking that military background is all I have. You see a farmer with some old service experience. That's going to be a costly mistake. The first sign of trouble came just after midnight. Storm's alert bark echoed through the darkness, seconds before Marcus's perimeter sensors triggered. Through his security monitors, he watched 4 shadowy figures approach his prized John Deere tractor, their movements betraying military training. Inside his command center, hidden beneath the old tool shed, Marcus observed their approach through multiple camera angles. The intruders moved with practiced efficiency, using hand signals and tactical spacing that spoke of professional training. Contact east. Mia's voice crackled through their secure radio. She was watching from her strategic position in the converted grain silo, providing overwatch. Two more teams approaching from the tree line. They're carrying equipment, probably tools for sabotage. Marcus checked his monitors, noting the professional deployment pattern. They're running a coordinated operation. Multiple teams, synchronized. A timing. These aren't just outlaws anymore. Movement by the barn, former Deputy Collins reported from his hidden position. The retired lawman had proven himself a valuable ally, his years of police experience complementing Marcus's military background. They've got some kind of electronic devices. Look sophisticated. The intruders reached the tractor, quickly beginning their work. Their tools weren't simple vandalism equipment. They carried professional-grade diagnostic tools, specialized mechanical implements, and what looked like military-grade electronic warfare devices. They're not just trying to damage it, Marcus observed, watching them connect devices to the tractor's computer system. They're trying to completely disable it, probably planning to fry the electronics, corrupt the operating system. Sir, Collins' voice carried urgency. Those devices they're using, that's not standard equipment. That's military-grade hardware. Where'd a bunch of outlaws get tech like that? Marcus watched as the intruders worked, their movements precise and coordinated. Because they're not just outlaws. Look at their formation, their equipment, their tactics. These are professional operators. Through his thermal imaging, Marcus could see two more teams establishing security positions around the property. Their deployment was textbook military. Overlapping fields of fire, elevated observation posts, coordinated communications. They're good, Mia admitted, watching through her night vision scope. Really good. This isn't some random gang operation. No, Marcus agreed. This is something else entirely. Hamilton's building a professional paramilitary force, using the Ravagers as cover. His fingers flew across his control panel, activating secondary surveillance systems. Let's see how they handle some complications. The first sign that something was wrong came when the intruders' electronic warfare devices suddenly lost power. Their sophisticated sabotage equipment, designed to override the tractor's complex systems, went dark. What the hell? One of them muttered, checking his equipment. Everything's dead. Some kind of localized EMP? Marcus allowed himself a small smile. 15 years of preparation had taught him a lot about protecting vital equipment. Every piece of machinery on his farm was hardened against electronic attack, shielded in ways that would impress military engineers. Teams 2 and 3 report. Their leader whispered into his radio, receiving only static in response. Their communications were being selectively jammed, another of Marcus's defensive measures. Sir, Collins called quietly, they're switching to backup equipment. These guys are prepared. They've got contingencies. The intruders pulled out secondary devices, more robust equipment designed to resist interference. But Marcus had anticipated this too. Suddenly, the area around the tractor was flooded with invisible infrared light, playing havoc with their night vision equipment. NVGs are useless, one operator reported, switching to normal vision. Someone's flooding the spectrum. Storm's bark echoed from multiple directions, the sound amplified and distorted by hidden speakers. The psychological impact was immediate. Even trained operators found themselves jumping at shadows, unable to trust their senses. Pull back, their leader ordered, recognizing a prepared killing zone when he saw one. Something's not right. This isn't a normal farm. As they retreated, Marcus watched their movement patterns. Their withdrawal was professional, coordinated, showing the same tactical proficiency as their approach. These men weren't common criminals. They were trained operators, probably former military or private security. They're regrouping at the tree line, Mia reported. Looks like they're calling for instructions. Through his surveillance system, Marcus picked up fragments of their encrypted communications. They were reporting to Hamilton, describing the unexpected resistance they'd encountered. Breach teams pulling back, Collins confirmed. But they're not leaving. They're establishing observation positions. Marcus nodded, watching through his thermal imaging as the team set up surveillance posts. They're gathering intel now. Next time, they'll come better prepared. Think they know what they're dealing with, Mia asked. They know something's wrong, Marcus replied. Their equipment failure wasn't random. The countermeasures they encountered were too specific, too professional. They'll report back to Hamilton that this farm has sophisticated defenses. Dawn was breaking as Marcus walked his property, assessing any signs the intruders had left behind. Storm moved beside him, the dog's training allowing him to detect any surveillance devices or remaining threats. They'll be back, Mia said, joining him near the tractor. And next time, they'll bring better equipment, more men. Marcus examined the tools the intruders had dropped in their retreat. Military-grade electronic warfare devices, professional sabotage equipment, sophisticated diagnostic tools. This confirms it. Hamilton's operation is bigger than we thought. He's got serious backing, military-grade resources. These aren't just criminals, Collins added, studying the abandoned equipment. This is a professional outfit. Question is, what do they really want with this valley? Marcus's phone buzzed, a message from Sheriff Davidson. 3 more farms had been hit overnight, their equipment completely disabled. The pattern was clear. Systematic attacks designed to force compliance through economic pressure. They're isolating targets, Marcus explained, his tactical mind mapping out their strategy. Taking out key equipment, disrupting operations, making it impossible to maintain independence. Classic insurgency tactics. Mia picked up one of the abandoned devices, examining its sophisticated circuitry. This is bleeding-edge technology. Some of this stuff isn't even available on the civilian market. Where's Hamilton getting this kind of hardware? That's what worries me, Marcus replied. This level of equipment, the tactical proficiency of his operators, the strategic nature of their property acquisitions. This isn't just about controlling farmland. They're building something bigger. Through his binoculars, Marcus watched as vehicles began arriving at the old Miller property. Heavy construction equipment, industrial generators, sophisticated communications gear, all pointing to a major operation in development. Whatever they're planning, Collins observed, your farm stands in their way. They'll be back, and next time they won't just target the tractor. Marcus nodded, his mind already planning countermeasures. Let them come. 15 years of preparation isn't just about defending equipment. Every inch of this property is designed to counter exactly this kind of threat. Storm's ears suddenly pricked up, catching something in the distance. Through the morning mist, they could see a convoy of motorcycles approaching along the valley road. Hamilton was coming to assess the situation personally. Get ready, Marcus told his allies. Last night was just a probe. The real test is about to begin. Marcus stood in his underground command center, surrounded by monitors displaying every angle of his property. Mia and Collins watched in amazement as he activated systems that had remained hidden for 15 years. Panels slid away from seemingly solid walls, revealing racks of equipment that would make military contractors envious. After Afghanistan, Marcus explained, checking the status of his perimeter sensors, I knew I couldn't just walk away. Many of my brothers tried that, tried to pretend they could just forget everything they'd learned, but the world has a way of finding you. Mia ran her hand along a wall of communications equipment. This is why you always insisted on doing your own renovations. Every improvement to the ranch was an improvement to our defensive capabilities, Marcus finished. The new irrigation system, underground sensors and fiber optic cables, solar, panels, power supply for the security grid, even the fence posts are more than they appear. Collins whistled softly as Marcus brought up a topographical display of the entire valley. Red dots marked properties already under Ravager control, creating a pattern that was now clearly strategic. You've been preparing for something like this all along. Not specifically this, Marcus admitted, but something. When you've seen what I've seen, you learn to be ready. He typed a command, and new layers appeared on the map. Every approach to the ranch is monitored. Multiple redundant systems, hardened against electronic warfare, but that's just the beginning. Storm's ears perked up seconds before an alert flashed on one of the screens. A drone, flying just above treetop level, was approaching from the direction of the Miller property. Its flight pattern suggested military-grade hardware, not consumer technology. They're mapping the terrain, Marcus observed, watching the drone's methodical progress. Looking for vulnerabilities, planning their next move. He pressed a button, and a subtle hum filled the air. The drone's feed immediately went dark. Directional EMP? Collins asked, recognizing the technology. Marcus nodded. Focused enough to avoid damaging our own equipment. They'll lose 3 or 4 drones before they realize this airspace is denied. He moved to another console, bringing up detailed schematics of his property's defense systems. But they'll adapt. They'll try ground-penetrating radar next, looking for underground structures. Which is why the entire command center is shielded, Mia realized, noting the layers of protection built into the walls. The metallic paint on the barn isn't just for show, is it? Ferromagnetic shielding, Marcus confirmed, blocks most scanning technologies. The same paint is mixed into the concrete foundation of every building. To any surveillance, this looks like a normal ranch. He paused as another alert sounded. They're probing the electronic perimeter again, more sophisticated this time. Through the monitors, they watched as Hamilton's men established new observation posts around the property. Their equipment was clearly visible through thermal imaging. Next-generation surveillance gear, signal interceptors, electronic warfare packages. This is millions of dollars worth of hardware, Collins muttered. Who's backing these guys? That's what we need to find out. Marcus moved to a secure computer terminal, isolated from any network. While they're busy probing our defenses, I've been doing some reconnaissance of my own. He brought up surveillance photos of the Miller property, showing the ongoing construction. They're building something big up there. The power consumption alone is off the charts. Mia studied the images. Those aren't just storage buildings. Look at the antenna arrays, the satellite uplinks. They're establishing some kind of communications hub. More than that, Marcus added, zooming in on specific details. See these foundations? Reinforced concrete, blast-resistant design, the ventilation systems, filtered air handling, positive pressure capability. They're building a hardened facility. A proximity alarm interrupted their analysis. Storm was already moving toward the stairs, responding to a threat only he could sense. Marcus switched views to the perimeter cameras, watching as a single figure approached the front gate. Hamilton, Collins identified him. Coming alone this time. Marcus checked his security. Readouts, not entirely alone. He's got at least 4 sniper teams set up in the hills, plus whatever surveillance package he's carrying. He stood, checking his concealed sidearm. Time to have a chat. Marcus, Mia caught his arm. He's not here to talk. This is reconnaissance. He wants to see your setup personally. I know, Marcus smiled slightly, so let's give him something to think about. Above ground, Marcus emerged from the barn, Storm at his heel. He'd changed into his work clothes, maintaining the image of a simple farmer. But Mia and Collins, watching through the security feeds, could see the calculated precision in every movement. Hamilton stood at the gate, his massive frame silhouetted against the morning sun. He dressed down as well. Flannel shirt, work boots, trying to look less threatening, but the bulge of body armor was visible beneath his clothes, and his stance betrayed his military training. "Beautiful morning," Hamilton called out, as Marcus, approached. Thought we could clear the air after last night's misunderstanding. Marcus stopped at a carefully chosen distance, positioning himself so any sniper would have to shoot through Hamilton to reach him. No misunderstanding. Your men tried to sabotage my equipment. They failed. Failed spectacularly, Hamilton agreed, his eyes studying every detail of Marcus's setup. You know, it's interesting. Most farmers, their equipment goes down when hit, with military-grade EMP devices. Yours didn't even hiccup, and those counter-surveillance measures, very impressive. Just good maintenance, Marcus replied mildly. Any farmer worth his salt takes care of his equipment. Hamilton's laugh held no humor. Come on, Reeves. We both know what's really going on here. The hardware your security system is running, that's not civilian tech. The countermeasures that fried my men's gear, that's classified hardware. The kind that doesn't officially exist. Marcus said nothing, letting Hamilton talk. Every word revealed more about what they were dealing with. See, here's what I can't figure out, Hamilton continued. Your record shows you mustered out as a senior sergeant, but the setup you've got here, this is way above that pay grade, which means either you've got serious backing or there's a lot more to your service record than shows up in official channels. Storm's growl was barely audible as Hamilton took a step closer to the gate. The former Force Recon operator smiled at the dog's reaction. Belgian Malinois. Not just any Malinois, though. That's a specialized breeding line. Same stock that supplies certain three-letter agencies. Another interesting choice for a simple farmer. Is there a point to this visit? Marcus asked quietly. Hamilton's expression hardened. The point is, you're sitting on something valuable. This valley, it's perfect for our needs. Strategic location, natural barriers, limited access points. We're going to take it one way or another. But you're different from the others. You've got skills, resources, could be useful to our organization. Not interested, Marcus replied. Think about it, Hamilton pressed. You've got what, maybe a dozen sophisticated defensive systems? We've got an army, trained operators, unlimited resources, political backing. You really want to stand alone against all that? Marcus met Hamilton's gaze steadily, who said, I'm standing alone. Something in his tone made Hamilton pause. The former Force Recon operator's eyes narrowed as he studied Marcus with new intensity. You know what's coming. You've been preparing for something like this for years. Why? What do you know? Goodbye, Mr. Hamilton, Marcus said simply, turning to walk away. This isn't over, Reeves, Hamilton called after him. You've got 24 hours to reconsider. After that, we do this the hard way. Back in the command center, Mia and Collins watched Hamilton's departure on the monitors. His sniper teams remained in position, gathering what intelligence they could. He's right about one thing, Collins said grimly. They've got resources, manpower. Even with all this equipment, we're outnumbered. Marcus smiled slightly as he brought up a new set of security feeds. Numbers aren't everything, and who said anything about being outnumbered? The screens showed hidden cameras throughout the valley. In barns, workshops, and cellars across the county, other veterans had been preparing. Other quiet men who'd chosen this valley for the same reasons as Marcus. They'd recognized what was coming, and they'd been getting ready. The thing about quiet men, Marcus said softly, is that we tend to recognize our own kind. Hamilton thinks he's dealing with one prepared farmer. He's about to learn why some valleys are best left in peace. The night wind carried the scent of pine and sage as Marcus guided his truck along the valley's back roads. Storm sat alert in the passenger seat, ears tracking every sound. They passed darkened farmhouses and silent barns, but Marcus knew better than to trust the apparent quiet. Behind those weathered walls, decisions were being made that would determine the valley's future. Mia's directions led them to an unmarked dirt track that wound through a stand of old-growth forest. The track ended at what appeared to be an abandoned lumber mill. its rusted equipment casting long shadows in the moonlight. As Marcus pulled up, movement caught his eye, a subtle shift in the shadows that most would have missed. "Clear!" a voice called softly from the darkness. Mike Chen, Mia's father and former Navy SEAL, emerged from his hiding spot. "You weren't followed." Marcus nodded, appreciating the professional surveillance. "Hamilton's men are busy fortifying the Miller property, but they'll notice I'm gone soon enough." Mike led them into the mill through a side entrance. The interior had been converted into a makeshift command center with maps covering the walls and communication equipment humming quietly. Around a central table stood 5 figures Marcus had known for years, though never like this. James Cooper, who most knew as a quiet wheat farmer, stood examining tactical overlays with the precision of the Delta Force operator he'd once been. Besides him, Maria Ruiz, the local mechanic, cleaned a disassembled rifle with the expertise of her Force Recon training. Tom Wilson, still sporting bruises from the Ravager's attack, carried himself with the disciplined posture of his Ranger. Background: "Welcome to the Resistance," David Peterson said quietly. The elderly beekeeper's gentle demeanor belied his decades of intelligence work. "Seems we're not the only ones who chose this valley for its tactical advantages." Marcus studied the assembled group. "How long have you all been preparing?" "Same as you," James replied, marking positions on the map. "We each saw what was coming. Different angles, same conclusion. The world's changing, power structures shifting, smart folks prepare." Maria reassembled her rifle with practiced efficiency. "We chose this valley for the same reasons Hamilton wants it. Natural barriers, defensible positions, strategic location, but we came to protect it, not exploit it." "Speaking of Hamilton," Tom interjected, "his operation's bigger than we thought." He activated a laptop showing surveillance photos. "These came from my cousin at the FBI. The Ravagers are just the visible front. Behind them is a private military corporation called Phoenix Horizon." Marcus examined the photos. "I've heard whispers. They're supposedly connected to former intelligence officials, corrupt military contractors. Been building shadow networks across the country." "More than whispers," David added. "They're establishing strategic positions nationwide, critical infrastructure, transportation corridors, communication hubs, building a parallel power structure." Mike brought up more detailed satellite imagery of the Miller property. Their construction project is just phase 1. They're planning to turn the entire valley into a forward operating base. Black site communications, weapons storage, training facilities. "That's why they need total control," Mia observed. "Can't have independent farmers potentially observing their operation." Marcus studied the tactical displays, noting how the Ravagers' property acquisitions created a strategic pattern. They're not just taking random farms. Each position they've secured overlooks key terrain or provides tactical advantage. "And their resources are substantial," Maria added. "The equipment they're bringing in, next-generation surveillance systems, electronic warfare packages, military-grade weapons. They've got serious backing." James pulled up financial records on another screen. "Phoenix Horizon's got government contracts, corporate connections. Their tentacles run deep. Local law enforcement can't touch them, and federal agencies are compromised." "Which is why it falls to us," Tom said grimly. "We're the only ones positioned to stop them. But we need coordination, strategy." Marcus nodded slowly. "Hamilton thinks he's dealing with isolated farmers. We need to keep that illusion while we prepare." David moved to a secure communications console. "We've got other allies, veterans across the county who recognize the pattern. They're standing by, waiting for our signal." "First priority is information security," Mike stated. "They're watching all standard communications channels. We need an alternate network." Maria smiled slightly. "Already handled. I've modified the valley's old agricultural monitoring system. Underground sensors, weather stations, soil monitors, they're all part of our secure mesh network now. Clever. Marcus approved. They'll be looking for military-style communications, not agricultural data. Storm's ears suddenly pricked up. Seconds later, a proximity alarm sounded. Through the mill's surveillance cameras, they watched a convoy of motorcycles pass on the main road. Night patrol, Tom identified. They're mapping traffic patterns, establishing baseline activity levels. We need to coordinate our defensive preparations without attracting attention, James said. Normal farming activity during the day, security. Work at night. Mia pulled up a calendar. Harvest season's coming. We can use that as cover for equipment movement, supply distribution. Speaking of equipment, Maria interjected, I've been modifying farm machinery, reinforced frames, hardened electronics, dual-purpose capabilities. They look normal, but they're combat-ready, if needed. David studied Marcus thoughtfully. You're set up at Evergreen Ranch. You've got more than just defensive capabilities, don't you? Marcus nodded. Underground workshops, equipment storage, training facilities. Been expanding them for years. Room for everything we need. Then that's our forward operating base, Mike decided. The rest of us can maintain our defensive positions, coordinate through the agricultural network, make them divide their attention. Tom marked key positions on the tactical map. We've got hidden caches throughout the valley, weapons, ammunition, medical supplies. Everything's in place for sustained resistance. Hamilton's given me 24 hours to surrender the ranch, Marcus informed them. When I refuse, they'll make their move. Good, James said grimly. Let them come. Every farm in this valley is a fortress. They just don't know it yet. Maria began distributing encrypted communications devices disguised as agricultural monitors. These will keep us coordinated. Agricultural data on the surface, tactical communications underneath. Remember, David cautioned, Hamilton's men are professionals. They'll be watching for any sign of organized resistance. We maintain our cover as simple farmers until the last possible moment. Mia marked medical supply caches on the map. I can coordinate resource distribution through my veterinary rounds. No one questions a vet visiting farms. We've got advantages they don't know about, Mike added. Knowledge of the terrain, hidden, roots local support. Every person in this valley's got a stake in stopping them. Marcus studied the assembled group. Warriors who'd chosen peace but prepared for war. Each had seen enough conflict to recognize the approaching storm. Each had spent years preparing in their own way. Hamilton thinks he's fighting one old farmer, Tom said quietly. He's about to learn he's taking on an army. No, Marcus corrected. We're not an army. We're something more dangerous. We're neighbors defending our home. The night wind carried the sound of distant motorcycles as they finalized their plans. In barns and cellars across the valley, other veterans waited, maintaining their peaceful facade while preparing for the coming conflict. The real strength of Shadow Creek Valley wasn't in its tactical position or natural defenses. It was in the quiet men and women who'd chosen it as their home, who'd spent years preparing for a moment they hoped would never come. Dawn was approaching as Marcus drove back to Evergreen Ranch. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten, promising another beautiful day in the valley, but this dawn was different. The pieces were in place, the allies were ready. When Hamilton made his move, he'd find out why some quiet valleys are best left in peace. Marcus's underground command center hummed with activity as surveillance feeds tracked unusual movements around the Miller property. Through high-resolution cameras, they watched as unmarked trucks delivered sophisticated equipment under cover of darkness. Each delivery revealed more about the true scale of Hamilton's operation. Those aren't just construction materials, Mia observed, zooming in on shipping manifests. Look at the markings, same suppliers that provide equipment to government black sites. David Peterson's intelligence background proved invaluable as he analyzed the patterns. They're building a sovereign communications hub, off-grid power generation, quantum encryption capabilities, hardened data centers. This is military-grade infrastructure. But why here? Collins asked, marking new security positions on their tactical map. Why this specific valley? Marcus pulled up geographical surveys on another screen. Location: 3 state borders within 50 miles. Multiple escape routes, natural barriers against ground-based surveillance, perfect for an operation that needs to stay hidden while maintaining strategic access. Storm's alert posture drew their attention to a new feed. A helicopter approached the Miller property, flying without lights despite the pre-dawn darkness. Its flight pattern suggested military training, low altitude, terrain masking, minimal radar signature. Phoenix Horizon executives, David identified as figures, emerged from the aircraft. Former intelligence officials, private military contractors, the real power behind Hamilton's operation. Through their surveillance network, they intercepted fragments of encrypted communications. Maria's technical expertise had allowed them to crack portions of the Ravager's security protocols, revealing pieces of a larger puzzle. They're not just building a base, Maria said, decoding another transmission. They're establishing a shadow infrastructure, private military operations, black market logistics, digital warfare capabilities, all hidden behind the cover of ordinary farmland. Mia's drone feed captured images of new construction at the Miller property. Those foundations are deeper than they need to be. Underground facilities, probably connected to existing cave systems in the limestone ridges. Smart, Marcus acknowledged. Natural thermal masking against infrared detection, hard to distinguish from normal geological features. They've done their homework. A priority alert flashed across their screens. James Cooper's perimeter sensors had detected movement along the valley's northern access road. A convoy of unmarked vehicles was approaching, led by black SUVs with diplomatic plates. Foreign investors, David identified, checking databases he'd maintained from his intelligence days. Shell companies linked to various international interests. This operation has global backing. Marcus studied the tactical implications. They're not just building a domestic black site. This is an independent power base outside traditional authority structures. Self-contained, self-defending, with its own rules. Like a sovereign territory, Collins realized, but hidden in plain sight. Who'd look twice at a few thousand acres of farmland? Storm's ears pricked up seconds before their sensors detected new electronic surveillance attempts. Hamilton's technical teams were probing defenses again, using increasingly sophisticated methods. They're mapping our response capabilities, Maria noted, tracking the electronic attacks. Each probe reveals more about our defensive systems. They're building a detailed picture. Let them look, Marcus replied calmly. Everything they can. See is what we want them to see. The real surprises stay hidden until we need them. Mia's medical training had given her access to various properties throughout the valley. Her tablet displayed a growing network of allied positions. More veterans are reaching out, former special forces, intelligence operators, combat engineers. All chose this valley for the same reasons we did. Hamilton's made a critical mistake, David observed. He assumed control of the valley meant controlling the land. He forgot about the people. Through their surveillance, they watched Hamilton personally inspect the Miller property's construction. His military bearing was obvious. As he reviewed progress, coordinated with technical teams and deployed security forces with tactical precision. He's building an army, Collins said grimly. Professional operators, mercenaries, foreign military advisors, all hidden behind the Ravager's outlaw facade. Marcus nodded, his tactical mind analyzing patterns. But he's vulnerable during the transition. Right now, he's caught between maintaining the criminal cover story and establishing the real operation. That's our window. A new alert drew their attention. Thermal imaging showed teams of engineers installing fiber optic networks throughout the valley, all leading back to the Miller Properties communication hub. They're creating their own secure infrastructure, Maria explained, independent from normal telecommunications. Once it's operational, they'll have total information control over the valley. Not quite total, Marcus corrected, revealing another layer of their own preparations. Those irrigation pipes we installed last summer, dual-purpose conduits. We've got our own independent network running right alongside theirs. David's intelligence experience proved invaluable as he analyzed intercepted communications. They're discussing something called Project Eclipse, references to going dark and digital sovereignty. This is bigger than just a hidden base. Mia's drone captured images of sophisticated satellite uplinks being installed. Those arrays could provide worldwide communications, completely independent from traditional networks. They're building their own private internet, a shadow infrastructure, Marcus concluded. Military capabilities, secure communications, independent logistics, everything needed to operate outside normal authority structures. And all hidden behind the perfect cover story. Storm's alert bark warned them seconds before new movement appeared on their screens. Hamilton's men were establishing additional observation posts, focusing particular attention on Evergreen Ranch. They suspect something, Collins warned. Our defenses are too professional, too coordinated for a simple farming operation. Good, Marcus replied. Let them wonder. Every hour they spend trying to figure us out is another hour we have to prepare. Through their surveillance network, they intercepted more fragments of Project Eclipse communications. References to digital independence, sovereign operations, and unrestricted capabilities painted a disturbing picture. They're not just hiding from authority, David realized, decoding another transmission. They're building an alternative to it, a private power structure beyond traditional control. Marcus studied the tactical displays, watching as Hamilton's operation continued to grow. This valley isn't just convenient terrain for them, it's a prototype. Once they prove the concept here, they'll replicate it elsewhere, Mia finished. Hidden bases in rural areas nationwide, a parallel infrastructure invisible to normal observation. Maria's technical analysis revealed more details. The quantum encryption systems they're installing, that's beyond cutting edge, designed to be completely secure against future computational capabilities. They're thinking long-term. A proximity alert showed more construction materials arriving at the Miller property. Through high-resolution cameras, they could see specialized equipment being unloaded, advanced weapon systems disguised as agricultural machinery. They're preparing for resistance, Collins observed, not just from us. These defenses are designed to repel military-grade attacks. Because they know what's coming, David added grimly. Once their true purpose is discovered, conventional forces will try to shut them down. They're building a fortress. Marcus brought up detailed scans of the valley's terrain, but they've made one critical assumption. They think the only threats they face are external. They don't realize the real threat is already inside, Mia finished. Hidden in plain sight, just like them. Storm's heightened alertness warned them moments before their sensors detected a new electronic signature. A sophisticated surveillance drone was mapping the valley using ground-penetrating radar. Looking for underground structures, Maria identified. They know we have hidden capabilities. They're trying to map them. Let them look, Marcus replied calmly. Everything they find is part of the deception. The real network stays hidden until we need it. Through their own surveillance, they watched as Hamilton personally coordinated with newly arrived technical advisors. His operation was growing more sophisticated by the hour, revealing capabilities far beyond a simple criminal enterprise. This is what he meant by resources, Collins realized. Not just men and equipment, he's got an entire shadow infrastructure at his disposal. Marcus nodded, his expression grim. Which means we're not just fighting the Ravagers anymore. We're up against something much bigger, something that wants to turn our valley into ground zero for a new kind of power structure. The morning sun was rising over Shadow Creek Valley, illuminating a landscape transformed. Behind the peaceful facade of farmland and open fields, two sophisticated operations were preparing for conflict. But only one side truly understood the terrain they were fighting for. Only one side knew why some quiet valleys were best left. In peace, the attack began at midnight, precisely as Marcus had predicted. Hamilton's forces moved with military precision, deploying in pre-planned positions around Evergreen Ranch. Through his command center's monitors, Marcus watched thermal. Signatures spread across his property like a closing fist. 3 strike teams approaching from the North Ridge, Mia reported from her observation post in the converted grain silo. They're using terrain masking, staying below your fence line sensors. Storm's ears twitched seconds before the first electronic attack hit. The ranch's power grid flickered as Hamilton's technical teams attempted to breach their defenses using military-grade electromagnetic pulse generators. They're trying to blind us. Maria's voice crackled through their secure network. Sophisticated multi-spectrum attack, EMPs, signal jammers, cyber intrusion attempts. Marcus smiled slightly as his backup systems engaged seamlessly. 15 years of preparation. Everything's hardened, redundant, self-healing. Let them waste time on the obvious approaches. Through infrared cameras, they watched Hamilton's operators deploy specialized equipment around the property perimeter. Their movements betrayed extensive military training, coordinated teams, overlapping fields of fire, sophisticated breach. Tactics. Primary target appears to be your barn complex, Collins observed from his hidden position. They think that's your command center. The underground facility's still secret. Marcus tracked multiple assault teams moving into position. They're following standard military doctrine. Establish superiority, isolate the target, eliminate resistance systematically. Professional operation. Multiple sniper teams setting up on the western ridge, Mia warned. High-end thermal optics, suppressed rifles. These aren't ordinary mercs. The first direct assault came from the eastern approach. A strike team advanced under cover of smoke grenades, using the pre-dawn darkness to mask their movement. Their equipment was state-of-the-art, next-generation body armor, enhanced night vision, networked tactical communications. Breach team. Approaching the main gate, Collins reported. Shaped charges, thermal cutters. They're not planning to leave much standing. Marcus activated defensive measures he'd spent years preparing. Hidden sprinkler systems engaged, but instead of water, they dispersed a specialized compound that rendered thermal imaging useless. Sonic deterrents activated at frequencies that disrupted electronic equipment while remaining inaudible to human ears. Their night vision's compromised, Mia confirmed. Thermal's useless. They're switching to standard optics. Hamilton's voice crackled through their intercepted communications. Alpha team, hold position. Beta, Delta, maintain suppressing fire. Something's wrong. This isn't normal countermeasure equipment. Through surveillance feeds, Marcus watched Hamilton coordinate from a mobile command center near the Miller property. The former Force Recon operator's expression was grim as his. First assault faltered against unexpected defenses. Second wave incoming, Maria warned. They're adapting tactics, multiple breach points, synchronized attack pattern. Storm's alert posture signaled seconds before explosive charges detonated against the barn's reinforced walls. The structure held, its heavily armored frame absorbing the blast. Hamilton's men pushed forward under covering fire, their movements precise and coordinated. They're probing for weaknesses, Marcus observed. Each attack reveals more about our capabilities. Time to show them something new. Hidden defensive positions activated across the property. Years of preparation had turned every fence post, every irrigation pipe, every seemingly innocent piece of farm equipment into part of an integrated defense network. Multiple targets retreating, Mia reported with satisfaction. Their equipment's failing, communications disrupted. They're falling back to secondary positions. Hamilton's voice carried frustration as he ordered his men to regroup. This isn't just some paranoid farmer's setup. We're dealing with military-grade defenses, professional countermeasures. Marcus watched as Hamilton's forces established new positions, adapting to the unexpected resistance. Their tactical flexibility proved their training. When one approach failed, they immediately shifted to alternative strategies. They're bringing in heavier equipment, Collins warned. Armored vehicles disguised as farm machinery. Someone's invested serious resources in this operation. Through their surveillance network, they intercepted fragments of Hamilton's communications with his Phoenix Horizon superiors. The conversation revealed growing concern about the unexpected resistance. At Evergreen Ranch, this location is critical to Project Eclipse, an unnamed executive insisted. Whatever it takes, whatever resources required, that property must be secured. Marcus coordinated with his hidden allies throughout the valley. Each veteran had prepared their own defenses, creating an interlocking network of resistance that Hamilton's forces hadn't detected. James reports movement near his position, Mia relayed. They're trying to establish a secondary attack axis. Mike's team has their flanking element contained, Maria added. Valley's defensive grid is fully active. Every approach is covered. Storm's heightened alertness preceded another wave of electronic warfare attacks. Hamilton's technical teams deployed sophisticated signal intelligence equipment, trying to locate the source of the ranch's defensive capabilities. They're scanning for power signatures, Maria reported. Looking for our command and control center, but our shielding's holding. They can't get a fix on our real infrastructure. Marcus watched Hamilton coordinate with his assault teams, noting how the former Force Recon operator's frustration was building. Each failed attack cost time and resources while revealing more about their own capabilities. This is your last chance, Reeves, Hamilton's voice carried across their emergency channel. You've impressed us, proved your worth. There's a place for someone with your skills in our organization. Not interested in helping you destroy this valley, Marcus replied calmly, knowing his response would reveal nothing about his true capabilities. Hamilton's laugh carried no humor. Destroy it? We're going to transform it. This is the future. Private military power, independent infrastructure, digital sovereignty. Progress is inevitable. Nothing's inevitable, Marcus countered, watching his tactical displays as more of Hamilton's forces moved into position. Especially not in this valley. The pre-dawn darkness erupted with renewed assault attempts. Hamilton's forces attacked from multiple angles simultaneously, combining physical breach attempts with electronic warfare and cyber attacks. They're getting desperate, Mia observed. Taking risks, making mistakes. Marcus nodded, tracking thermal signatures as Hamilton's men pushed forward under covering fire. They're on a timetable. Project Eclipse has deadlines. Our resistance is costing them more than just resources. Through their surveillance network, they watched Hamilton coordinate with newly arrived Phoenix Horizon assets. More equipment was being deployed, advanced electronic warfare platforms, surveillance drones, specialized breaching tools. They're committing everything they have, Collins warned. This isn't just about taking the ranch anymore. They need to prove they can handle unexpected resistance. Storm's alert bark preceded another wave of attacks. This time, Hamilton's forces attempted to breach the underground infrastructure they suspected existed beneath the ranch. Ground-penetrating radar, seismic sensors, electromagnetic detection gear, Maria listed as she tracked their electronic signatures. Military-grade hardware, latest generation. Someone's spending serious money on this operation. Marcus watched as Hamilton personally coordinated the assault, noting how the former Force Recon operator's tactics revealed growing desperation. Each failed attack forced them to commit more resources, expose more of their true capabilities. They're Vectoring in aerial assets, Mia reported. Unmarked helicopters approaching from the north. Looks like private military contractors. Time to show them why air superiority doesn't guarantee victory, Marcus replied, activating another layer of defenses he'd spent years preparing. The valley's defensive network engaged, creating a web of electronic countermeasures that forced the helicopters to maintain distance. Every approach to Evergreen Ranch was covered, every apparent vulnerability masking a prepared response. Multiple teams falling back, Collins confirmed. Their equipment's compromised, communications disrupted. They're losing coordination. Through intercepted channels, they heard Hamilton ordering his forces to regroup, to prepare for sustained operations. But the frustration in his voice revealed the truth. They'd expected a simple takeover of a farmer's property. Instead, they'd found themselves facing professional resistance they couldn't explain. "Sir," one of Hamilton's officers reported, "we've lost contact with our technical teams. Something's interfering with all standard frequencies. Even our backup systems are compromised." Marcus allowed himself a grim smile as he watched Hamilton's forces withdraw to defensive positions. The night's assault had cost them time, resources, and most importantly, the element of surprise. Now they knew they faced sophisticated opposition, but they still didn't understand its true nature. "They'll be back," Mia said quietly. "With more men, better equipment, new tactics." "Let them come," Marcus replied, watching the sun rise over his defended property. "Every attack teaches them the same lesson. Some valleys are best left in peace." The morning after the siege at Evergreen Ranch, Marcus stood before a gathering unlike any Shadow Creek Valley had seen before. The old community center buzzed with controlled energy as farmers, ranchers, and townspeople filed in. But these weren't just ordinary citizens. Beneath weathered faces and calloused hands lay the unmistakable bearing of warriors. "Last night's attack on Evergreen Ranch proved what we've suspected," Marcus addressed the assembled group. "Hamilton's forces aren't just criminal opportunists. They're a professional military organization with serious backing." David Peterson activated a holographic display showing tactical overlays of the valley. Phoenix Horizon's operation goes beyond mere territory control. They're establishing a prototype for something larger, an independent power structure hidden in plain sight. Mia distributed secure tablets displaying surveillance data from the previous night's engagement. Their equipment, tactics, and resources all point to state-level backing, but they made a critical mistake in choosing this valley. Because they thought they were targeting isolated farmers, James Cooper added, his Delta Force experience evident in his analysis. Instead, they've walked into a prepared defensive network 15 years in the making. Through the community center's windows, they could see Hamilton's forces conducting reconnaissance along the valley roads. Their patrols maintained professional discipline, but satellite imagery revealed their growing frustration. "They've lost the initiative," Maria Ruiz explained, highlighting electronic warfare data. "Each failed assault costs them resources and reveals more about their capabilities, but they still don't understand what they're really facing." Tom Wilson, his injuries from the earlier Ravager attack now properly treated, studied the tactical displays. "How many others do we have in position?" Mike Chen brought up a secure map overlay. Hidden throughout the valley, dozens of indicators showed prepared positions and cached resources. Each represented a veteran who'd chosen this community for the same reasons as Marcus, seeking peace but preparing for war. "We've got former special forces, intelligence operators, combat engineers," Mike detailed. "All living quiet lives, all ready to defend their homes. Hamilton thinks he's dealing with scattered resistance. He doesn't realize he's surrounded." "The locals are with us too," Collins added. "Regular folks who've had enough of being intimidated. They're reporting Ravager movements, providing cover for our operations, supporting the network." Storm's alert posture drew their attention moments before Elena Martinez, the local diner owner, hurried in. Hamilton's men just commandeered the old mill. They're setting up some kind of operations center. Marcus nodded, unsurprised. They need a forward base after last night's failure. The mill gives them elevated observation of the Central Valley. But that position has vulnerabilities they haven't discovered. James brought up detailed structural plans of the mill. Years earlier, they'd prepared contingencies for exactly this scenario. Hidden cameras, signal interceptors, and tactical options lay dormant, waiting to be activated. "What about the other holdout farms?" Mia asked, marking positions on the tactical display. "Hamilton will target them next. Try to isolate Evergreen Ranch." "Already handled," Maria replied with a tight smile. "Every property in this valley has defensive capabilities, some obvious, some hidden. Each prepared position supports the others. Hamilton thinks he's hunting rabbits, but he's walked into a wolf's den." Through their surveillance network, they watched Hamilton coordinate with Phoenix Horizon executives at the Miller property. Construction continued on the secret facility, but their timetable had clearly been disrupted. "Project Eclipse has deadlines," David interpreted, monitoring intercepted communications. "They need this valley secured quickly. Each delay risks exposing their true operation to outside attention." Marcus studied the assembled group, warriors who'd chosen peace but prepared for war. Hamilton's men are professionals. They'll adapt. Tactics, bring in more resources. The real fight is just beginning. "Let them come," Tom said grimly. "Every farmer in this valley knows what's at stake. We didn't spend years preparing these defenses just to back down now." Mia's tablet displayed new movement along the valley's access roads. Supply convoys were arriving at the Miller property. More equipment, more personnel, more resources committed to taking control. "They're escalating," Mike observed, "bringing in private military contractors, mercenaries, technical specialists. This goes beyond normal corporate security operations. Because this valley isn't just another acquisition for them," Marcus explained. "It's a prototype. If they can establish their shadow infrastructure here, they'll replicate it across the country. Hidden bases, private military power, digital sovereignty, all invisible to normal oversight." Elena's network of local supporters provided constant updates on Ravager movements. Hamilton's forces were establishing new patrol patterns, trying to map the valley's defensive capabilities. "They're searching for our command and control center," Maria noted, tracking their electronic surveillance attempts. "But our communications network is designed to be invisible. Agricultural data on the surface, tactical coordination underneath." James highlighted defensive positions on the tactical display. "Every farm in this valley is a fortress. Hidden caches, prepared fallback positions, interlocking fields of fire, all looking like normal agricultural infrastructure." Through high-resolution cameras, they watched Hamilton personally inspect the damage to his force's equipment from the previous night's engagement. The former Force Recon operator's frustration was evident as he coordinated with technical teams. "Their electronic warfare capabilities are sophisticated," Maria analyzed. "Military-grade systems, cutting-edge technology, but they're designed to fight conventional forces, not our hybrid network." Sheriff Davidson arrived with new intelligence from his law enforcement contacts. State police are starting to ask questions about the Ravagers' increased activity. Hamilton's cover story is wearing thin. "Good," Marcus replied. "The longer this drags out, the more attention it draws. Phoenix Horizon wants to operate in shadows. Sustained resistance threatens their entire model." Mia's medical training had given her access to various properties throughout the valley. Her tablet displayed a growing network of prepared positions, each representing a quiet professional who'd chosen this community. "Look at these response patterns," Mike noted, studying tactical data from the previous night. Hamilton's men are trained to fight military forces or civilian populations. They don't know how to handle defenders who can switch between both. Storm's alert bark preceded new movement on their surveillance feeds. Hamilton's forces were establishing observation posts throughout the valley, trying to isolate potential resistance networks. They still think they're dealing with scattered individuals, James observed. They don't understand that this entire valley is one integrated defensive system. Marcus brought up detailed terrain maps showing hidden routes and prepared positions. Hamilton's made another critical mistake. He's fighting for territory, but we're fighting for our home. Every farmer, every rancher, every quiet professional who chose this valley, we're all part of its defense. Elena's local intelligence network reported increasing pressure on valley residents. Hamilton's men were conducting interviews, offering incentives for information about defensive capabilities. Let them search, David advised. Every hour they spend looking for our network is another hour we have to strengthen it. The real power of this valley isn't in its weapons or technology, it's in its people. Through their surveillance, they watched Hamilton coordinate another operation. But this time, his forces moved with more caution, more respect for the defenders' capabilities. The night's engagement had taught them costly lessons. They'll be back, Marcus stated simply, with better equipment, new tactics, more resources. But they still don't understand what they're really fighting. This valley isn't just defended by weapons and walls, it's protected by every person who calls it home. The morning sun illuminated a changed landscape, where Hamilton saw only terrain. To be conquered, the defenders saw a community united. Each quiet professional, each prepared position, each hidden resource, all part of a network years in the making. Phoenix Horizon had chosen this valley for its strategic value, but they'd failed to recognize its true strength, the power of a community that had long prepared to defend its peace. The pre-dawn mist cloaked Mia's movements as she made her routine veterinary rounds, her truck's familiar silhouette drawing no attention from Hamilton's patrols. Behind the innocent facade of medical supplies, her vehicle carried something far more valuable: intelligence gathered from across Shadow Creek Valley. Multiple construction vehicles entering the Miller property, she reported through the secure agricultural network. They're reinforcing underground facilities, hardening key positions. Marcus monitored her progress from Evergreen Ranch's command center, while Storm maintained his vigilant watch. Each apparent veterinary visit provided crucial reconnaissance, mapping the growing Phoenix Horizon operation. Their security patterns are evolving, David Peterson noted, analyzing patrol data. More sophisticated surveillance, counterintelligence measures. They know we're watching, just not how. Through their hidden sensor network, they tracked Hamilton's forces establishing new defensive positions. The Ravager's outlaw facade had been discarded, replaced by professional military discipline. Intercepted communications suggest heightened alert status, Maria reported from her monitoring station. They're detecting patterns in local movements, trying to identify our intelligence network. James Cooper's Delta Force experience proved invaluable as he coordinated counter-surveillance measures. Let them chase shadows. Every false lead depletes their resources, reveals more about their capabilities. Mia's truck stopped at another farm, maintaining her cover as she treated livestock. Her trained eye noted new equipment being installed, sophisticated electronic warfare systems disguised as agricultural machinery. They're creating a signals, intelligence grid, she transmitted through encrypted channels, trying to map local communications, identify command and control nodes. Marcus studied tactical displays showing Phoenix Horizon's expanding infrastructure, their operations growing beyond the Miller property. Each new position reveals more about Project Eclipse's true scope. Elena Martinez's network of local supporters provided constant updates on Ravager movements. Hamilton's forces were pressuring Valley residents, seeking any information about the mysterious resistance they faced. 2 more private military contractors arrived last night, Mike Chen reported from his observation post. Former special operations, extensive combat experience. They're bringing in professionals. Through high-resolution surveillance, they watched Hamilton coordinate with Phoenix Horizon executives. The former Force Recon operator's frustration was evident as he reported another failed attempt to map the Valley's defensive network. Their electronic warfare teams are scanning for military-grade communications, Maria analyzed. But our agricultural data network is invisible to conventional detection. They're fighting the wrong war. Storm's alert posture signaled moments before their sensors detected new surveillance drones. Hamilton's forces were deploying advanced reconnaissance platforms, trying to penetrate the Valley's security. Quantum encryption systems being installed at the Miller complex, David identified through intercepted signals. They're preparing for something bigger than local control. This facility is meant to manage operations across multiple regions. Mia's veterinary rounds took her past the old mill, now converted into a Ravager-forward operating base. Her careful observations revealed sophisticated equipment being installed. Signals intelligence gear, electronic warfare platforms, tactical coordination centers. They're establishing a conventional military infrastructure, Marcus noted, tracking resource deployments, but they still don't understand the true nature of what they're fighting. James highlighted defensive positions on their tactical displays. Every farm in this valley is a sensor node. Every local resident a potential intelligence source. We're not just defending territory, we're protecting a community. Through their surveillance network, they watched Hamilton's forces conduct systematic searches of valley properties. Each inspection revealed their growing awareness of professional opposition. They're looking for military installations, weapons caches, command bunkers, Mike observed. But our strength isn't in centralized facilities. It's distributed throughout the entire valley. Maria's technical expertise had transformed agricultural monitoring systems into a sophisticated intelligence network. Weather stations gathered signals data, soil sensors detected movement patterns, irrigation systems mapped thermal signatures. New electronic warfare signatures detected, she reported, tracking emissions. They're deploying next-generation counter-surveillance systems, military-grade hardware not yet available on civilian markets. David's intelligence background proved crucial as they analyzed Phoenix Horizon's operation. This isn't just about controlling territory. They're establishing a prototype for autonomous power projection. Private military forces, secure communications, independent infrastructure. Mia's truck approached another checkpoint, her veterinary credentials drawing only cursory inspection. Behind the routine medical visit, sophisticated sensors mapped the Ravager's defensive positions. Their security procedures are evolving, she transmitted through secure channels. More thorough inspections, counter-surveillance sweeps. They're learning, adapting to our capabilities. Marcus studied tactical displays showing the Valley's hidden defensive network. Years of preparation had created an invisible web of sensors, communications, and prepared positions. Let them search, he advised. Every resource they commit to finding our network is one they can't use against us. Time works in our favor. Elena's local intelligence sources reported increasing pressure on Valley residents. Hamilton's forces were offering substantial rewards for information about defensive capabilities, trying to map resistance networks. They're focusing on technical signatures, Maria noted, monitoring their search patterns, electronic emissions, power consumption, communication frequencies. But our system is designed to be invisible to conventional detection. Through high resolution and cameras, they watched Hamilton coordinate with newly arrived military contractors. The former Force Recon operators' tactical adjustments revealed growing respect for their opposition's capabilities. Multiple technical teams deploying around Evergreen Ranch, Mike reported. They're trying to isolate your command and control center, cut off coordination with other defenders. Storm's heightened alertness preceded another wave of electronic surveillance. Hamilton's forces were probing defenses with increasingly sophisticated methods, searching for vulnerabilities. Let them probe, Marcus replied calmly. Every failed attempt teaches them the same lesson. This valley's strength isn't in its technology or terrain, it's in its people. Mia's medical rounds provided perfect cover for reconnaissance, each farm visit building a clearer picture of Phoenix Horizon's operation. Their construction continued at the Miller property, but with growing urgency. Project Eclipse has deadlines, David interpreted from intercepted communications. Their entire model depends on establishing operational bases without drawing attention. Our resistance threatens that timeline. James coordinated defensive preparations through their hidden network. Each apparent farming activity masked tactical movements, resource distribution, intelligence gathering. Hamilton's men are professionals, he observed. They recognize patterns, adapt tactics, learn from failures, but they're fighting the wrong kind of war. Through their surveillance, they watched Phoenix Horizon executives arrive for another inspection. The pressure on Hamilton was evident as he reported continued resistance to their operation. They expected to find isolated farmers, Marcus noted. Instead, they've encountered an integrated defensive network they can't explain. Every failed operation costs them time and resources. Maria's monitoring detected new electronic warfare attempts. Hamilton's forces were deploying sophisticated signal intelligence platforms, trying to map local communications. Their technical capabilities are impressive, she admitted. Military-grade systems, cutting-edge technology, but they're designed to fight conventional forces, not our hybrid network. The morning sun revealed Hamilton's forces establishing new observation posts throughout the valley. Their professional discipline was evident, but so was their growing frustration. They're searching for a traditional military opposition, David analyzed. Command centers, weapon stockpiles, communication hubs. They don't understand that every farm is a fortress. Every resident, a potential defender. Mia's veterinary duties took her past another Phoenix Horizon position. Behind her medical examinations, sophisticated sensors gathered crucial intelligence about their expanding operation. This isn't just about defending territory, Marcus reminded his allies. We're protecting a way of life. Every quiet professional who chose this valley, every resident who supports our network, we're all part of its defense. If you're enjoying this gripping tale of expert K9 handlers and cartel operations, make sure you're subscribed. Tomorrow's video will reveal never-before-shared tactics used by military K9 units that will completely change how you view working dogs. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from, and if you know someone who loves dogs or military stories, share this with them. They'll thank you later. And speaking of tomorrow's special video, I've saved something extra exciting for you. You won't want to miss how these elite K9 combat units train their dogs to perform tasks that seem almost impossible. Hit that notification bell to make sure you don't miss it.